Welcome back to the channel. Today you join us in this lovely Aston Martin DB11. On a typical British weather, rainy day, the Aston Martin Vantage Roadster that we normally run is in for some repairs, and the lovely people at Aston Martin have lent us this vehicle. Aston Martin themselves describe this as the new generation of Aston Martin, and they've made a complete departure away from the nice ornate dashboard to something that's fully digital. I personally prefer the previous generation dashboard. I like the clockwork analog kind of effect to it, but let's be honest, everything's moving full digital, and this is a natural progression from where they were at. The full digital dashboard features a number of things that you wouldn't normally find on the previous generation Aston. You can bring up satellite navigation, you can bring up much more information directly on the dashboard rather than having to go into the center console computer. So some of the features that I do enjoy about this new DB11 are that you can change the dampening on the suspension directly from the steering wheel. So much like a Mercedes, you can switch it to sport mode, and you can also go into sport mode plus. And the travel of the vehicle does change quite significantly between these modes. In terms of sport modes, again, you standardise in the GT mode. If you want to switch up, you can switch into sport, which again makes the exhaust sound that a little bit more tasty. Or you can go all the way through into sport plus, which turns the dashboard into a sort of mean red effect for you to be ready to have some fun. Again, I personally quite like it just in sports mode. It's a really nice mixture of settings. If you're going to mix two settings together, the sport mode along with the sport mode on the suspension really does bring out the best in this vehicle. A couple of other features worth noting about the DB11 is this move towards a more of a square steering wheel. Now, some people on other videos have commented about how this looks far too square. Me personally, it's quite a comfortable driving position. You can grip really nicely around the side of the wheel. The controls are very easy to reach. Again, they're not cheap looking controls. They've done really nicely on this setup. The paddle shift, again, lovely metal crafted handles. However, it is slightly spoilt by this move, this transition towards Mercedes parts. This indicator stalk is the same as what was on my 2013 Mercedes E-Class, and you'd think in something that was, this vehicle that was handed to us has got a value of £185,000, you would expect something a little bit more than a Mercedes piece of switchgear. And it doesn't just finish there. The center console, in terms of the infotainment, is also supplied by Mercedes, and it's again quite an older generation of Mercedes infotainment that's featured on this vehicle, and it just means that things are a little bit clunky. The graphics, whilst the graphics on the dashboard are quite sharp, the graphics on what can only be described as a child's tablet of a screen are a little bit ancient now. Yes, you've got all the features and the functionality and the things you'd expect to find in a modern infotainment system, but it's just got too much Mercedes-esque about it. One of the other really nice features about this vehicle and how it's been spec'd is this lovely kind of flake effect on the doors and in the center console. Also, the other real nice thing about the DB11 is these almost arrowhead effect handles. Again, nice and metal, no cheap plastics present there. It's nice that they've got the combination of what's truly Aston Martin heritage combined with the bits from Mercedes. The other part worth noting, I previously mentioned about the center console screen. The center console screen does not disappear. You cannot turn it off and hide it away, which I think is a real shame. And I think that's one of the key features they should have retained in this new generation of Aston Martin. Okay, let's get ourselves out on some open roads. Oh, that does sound good. So we've currently got the vehicle set up in sports mode with the sports dampening on the suspension, and that's really nice and smooth as we travel through these country lanes. Okay, so whilst Aston Martin might have got the digital dashboard all looking very nice, the sound of the indicator is horrific. I mean, just listen to that. So unlike the V8 Vantage that we would normally be driving, this car, you just don't feel any bumps or anything. The suspension is just so smooth. We're taking it around some country roads in Bedfordshire, and there's potholes and bits and pieces where you would never really want to even think about taking out a V8 Vantage Roadster. But in this, it's almost like you're gliding across them. It's almost got that Bentley-esque kind of feel to it. It sounds amazing. It drives so smooth. It's almost too smooth, really. But then again, for a car that we've taken out today that is listed at £185,000, I suppose you would expect a little bit of smoothness. I think the departure from some of the more traditional Aston Martin techniques has kind of made this car feel a little bit less Aston Martin. But again, we're going to be living in the future, not the past. Older Aston Martins, I feel, are a little bit more throaty. They want you to hear the engine and the sound of the naturally aspirated engine and exhaust setup. In this car, it's got a few too many controls about it. It wants to be aggressive, but at the same time it wants to be smooth. And the modes that we've been playing around with today, between Sport, Sport Plus and just GT, I still think its best performance is in Sport. Sport Plus is almost like it's just trying to pretend to be something it really can't be. Naturally, this is most suited towards being a GT car. It's not designed to be a sports vehicle, really, although it has the modes. They're really just mirroring what the Mercedes setup is with the engine up front. The weight distribution on this vehicle is quite interesting. The engine is actually set back behind the front wheels, and you'll see in some video shots that we took earlier just how far back the engine truly is into the cabin. In terms of road handling, even in weather conditions like this could easily just be like a daily driver. It holds the road really well. You feel comfortable in the setup. The seats are just utter luxury, as is everything about the interior, if you discount the Mercedes touches. An interesting note I was talking to a colleague about was the fact this is actually a 4-seater. Now, you won't fit 4 people like me in this car, but you can easily get the kids in the back if you're going out for the weekend or you're going away. Now, lots of people watching this video would never even dream of buying one of these vehicles. These vehicles are for people that probably have more money than sense. Me personally, I'm more of the, as I've said before, the older vintage Aston time. I first fell in love with the DB9, but then went on to sort of thoroughly enjoy the Vantage. And because I'm a bit of a drop-down roof kind of person, I went with the V8 Vantage Roadster, which you'll see featured in our other videos. This particular vehicle, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong. The leathers, the build, everything. It's made by people still in relatively like a shed, and you can still feel that about it. I hope it doesn't lose its character though. I think Aston Martin, yes, whilst they're in this new generation phase of their life, I think it would be a real shame to make a full departure from some of the things that really stand to the heritage of that brand.